Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men Live. Joining me, as she does every week, Carrlyn Bathe. How are you doing today, Carrlyn?
I'm doing well, Jesse. Just had my cup of noodles for breakfast, and I'm ready to rip. Let's go.
What happened to the Life cereal? You're on cup of noodles now?
I didn't want to risk choking on air again. So
all right, fair enough.
We've nixed cereal before the show.
Before we get to this week's Would You Rather, I want to welcome everybody watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but remind you, if you want an opportunity to have your questions or comments seen by me or Carrlyn, you do have to join us at Twitch. That's twitch.tv/LA Kings. And of course, All the Kings Men Live is brought to you by MANSCAPED, an official partner of the LA Kings. Thanks to this revolutionary company, manscaping accidents are a thing of the past. Just get yourself the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Inside, you'll find products like their Lawnmower 3.0, which has advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't cut you. Everything you need to keep trimmed and smelling nice is in the Perfect Package 3.0. You can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code KINGSMEN at manscaped.com. That's manscaped.com, and use the code KINGSMEN. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, Carrlyn, the Would You Rather this week has to do with the just completed NHL Draft Lottery. You like that segue?
I'm just waiting for the painful question. Bring it on.
And so the ping pong balls came out that the LA Kings are drafting second overall, with Ottawa taking the 3rd and 5th pick. One of those coming from San Jose. So the question is, would you rather draft second overall or draft 3rd and 5th overall?
I have to play my role as the optimist here.
Okay.
And if I think about getting another Drew Doughty caliber player second overall in that position, and just having a lifelong franchise player be a part of the Kings, and accepting that they got the second overall pick, which wasn't even what they were expecting to get, I have to play the optimist card and go, nope, I'm happy with that. But 2 picks in the top 10, like, that's, how do you say no? I don't know. I think about it like this. Like, you can get your own personal pan pizza, right? And you can eat it, and you're not going to be sick. You're not going to be exhausted. You're going to be completely content and happy with your personal pan pizza. But what if you got an extra large pizza? You might be kind of stoked about it. What if you get sick after? What if it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to? What if you throw up ultimately? What if it's a bad idea? Okay? I don't know, Jesse.
I'm not sure which analogy. Pizza is which option in that metaphor.
The second pick would be the personal pan.
Gotcha.
And the 3rd and the 5th would be the extra large, where you might have made a mistake. I don't know.
Well, no surprise to anybody who's familiar with me, but I can crush an entire large pizza by myself without breaking a sweat. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3rd and 5th overall picks. Look, we always say happiness is measured by expectation, and I was expecting the Kings to get the 7th overall pick. So if you told me that they got the 3rd, I'd be thrilled. If you told me they got the 5th, I'd be okay. So taking them both, I mean, it's great. But to answer this question, we're going to bring in our guest this week from CBS Sports, Pete Blackburn. How are you doing today, Pete?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So which would you rather have, Pete, the 2nd overall or the 3rd and the 5th overall?
Honestly, it depends on the year, I would say, because if you have 2 guys at the top of the class that, are game-changing talents like we thought we had last year, that might be a whole different story. Then I'd take number 2. Like, I'd take the best player possible. But when you have things sort of opened up after number 1, which is, I think that this is the class this year where there's number 1, and I think it's going to be Lafreniere. Everybody knows that. Yep. But behind him, it's kind of a toss-up. I would probably play the odds and take 2 picks.
Yeah.
So Jesse is saying I could have a large piece of a large pizza and I wouldn't get sick. That's what he's saying. That's what I heard.
In this particular season, if Ottawa called the Kings, if I was GM of the Kings and offered me the 3rd and 5th pick for number 2, I would say yes. Then I'd put them on hold, come back and ask for the picks and David Putney. That's how I would play that scenario for those draft day fans out there. But ultimately, the Kings aren't going to have the number 1 overall pick, and we won't know who's going to get that pick until much later. But Pete, we brought you on here today because we know that you have some strong opinions about the potential candidates to get that 1st overall pick. Why don't you walk us through your thought process on that?
I mean, so the way that the first stage of the draft lottery worked out, we got the most chaotic outcome possible, which is a random mystery team at the top of the draft picking number 1. But obviously, when you consider the fact that there are 16 teams in the running, and eventually that's going to be cut down to 8, but all those 8 teams are going to have basically the exact same percentage of odds of landing in that top spot, then you've got a possibility for a lot more chaos. And when you look at those teams, there are a number of possibilities that would be maximum chaos to land in the top spot. I look at Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh ends up with the top pick and is able to add Lafreniere to Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on the tail end of their careers, that'd be insane. Edmonton getting that pick and winning another draft lottery would be chaos, especially when you consider adding an elite offensive talent on the wing to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who are obviously amazing. And then you have, I throw the Blackhawks in there too, because the Blackhawks, I think everybody's kind of sick of the Blackhawks, and people love to say that the league favors Chicago in that market. So if they were to luck into the top overall pick, I think people would go insane and it would be hilarious. But, I just think there are a number of options. Obviously, the Maple Leafs throwing them in there as well. I would be very, very upset. I think a lot of people would be very, very upset. But there are a number of options that would be insane for, when you look at the overall picture and you say, these teams could pick first overall. It's crazy.
Carrlyn, is there a team that you least want to see wind up with that first overall pick?
Well, we got talking about this during our little rundown, and it was mentioned that Edmonton would be not a fun team to see get the overall first pick. And I'm going to have to agree with that, especially Pete bringing up being there with McDavid and Draisaitl. That's chaos. That's bad news bears right there. I do not want that. I don't want to see the Kings have to play against that. That would be utter and absolute chaos, I feel like, over in the West. But I counter that with someone I would love to see maybe get that.
Sure.
I would love to see maybe Montreal get Lafreniere and have hometown boy, first overall pick, be selected or well, I guess you can't select at this point because it's like, they would be getting that and obviously be picking him. But I would love to see him go there. I think that would be wonderful. And that would be a team that could use someone like that and could continue to build what they've got going on and maybe cause the least amount of chaos, if that makes sense.
I'm a bit torn on that because, as a Bruins fan, I don't want the Canadians to be good, but also, but on the other hand, I like it when the Bruins and Canadians are a rivalry that is thriving, and it hasn't been the case. And I think that you mentioned it, they could certainly use an elite offensive superstar in Montreal, and having that hometown aspect and having him be a Quebec product, I think that is probably the most natural fit of the 16 teams. Another team that I would throw in there that I would love to see is the Arizona Coyotes. I think that they are a team that could definitely use the offensive talent. I think that there's, they're sort of on the precipice of being relevant, and we've seen that hockey can thrive in the desert with Las Vegas. So I want to see the Coyotes work out in Arizona. And also there's the Taylor Hall aspect of it, where he continues to win draft lotteries for his team. So he goes to Arizona, they win the draft lottery. That's another cool story, or conspiracy theory for all the people out there.
The word I want to
What about you?
the word I want to key on is chaos, because Pete, you may not be familiar with this, but Carrlyn and all of our listeners at this point, or watchers, viewers, are probably aware of the fact that I don't like the draft as an institution. I don't like it as a method of distributing talent.
Wants to get rid of it.
Yeah. So for me, I either want a draft that leans heavily towards, justice, which would be the Montreal teams, the teams that are lowest in the standings, or I want maximum chaos, maximum disruption, maximum absurdity. And so for me, that is a team like Toronto, who is stretched to the cap limit as it is. So getting the first overall pick, a guy like Lafreniere, do they trade away one of their 4, expensive forwards? Do they trade the number 1 overall pick? I would love to see a scenario as completely unlikely as it is, where the Kings trade the second for the third and the fifth, then package an asset from their number 1 ranked prospect pool with the third and the fifth to get the first overall pick. I just want a mess of what I already believe to be a mess of a system.
Sounds like it, Jesse.
But
Oh
I
my God.
don't want Edmonton, specifically because after having so many opportunities to improve their team through a faulty system, and after coming up short for so many years in a row, for them to suddenly sort of luck into McDavid, Draisaitl, and Lafreniere after they finally got their front office in order, that would be a tough pill to swallow. And I don't want him in the Pacific Division unless he's playing for the Kings. So
Right. There's only so many chances that a team should have in that top slot to be able to get there. I look at Florida as another one of those teams where it's like they've stockpiled so much young talent. They've had a good core, but they've been completely mismanaged. And so, like, if Lafreniere goes there, I'm like, oh man, now I have to be worried for this guy that his development won't happen in the way that it should. So, yeah, there's certainly those teams that would present a concern.
Yeah, and that's part of my beef with Edmonton, right? Like one of the gripes that I constantly bring up is how many careers have the Edmonton Oilers, promising careers, have they sort of ground up in the gristmill of their last 12 seasons?
Yeah, but that's the thing. How many have they though? Like those players have been good for the most part. Obviously, Nail didn't work out too well for them, but like they've had good players. Like those players have hit. They just haven't put teams around those guys to find success.
Yeah.
And so like that's been probably the most frustrating part. It's like McDavid has been everything that we ever could have wanted and more. And he is like the face of this league. He should be thriving in Edmonton, but the management has not put a team around him. So he's trying to do it all himself with Leon Draisaitl.
And they do. The two of them do.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I don't like the draft has to do with the mantra of the podcast, which is happiness is measured by expectations. And when a player is drafted at a certain spot, it carries with it certain expectations. So you're right. Jordan Eberle, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, right? These guys have had careers and they're perfect. They've made millions of dollars. They'll be fine. Nobody should cry any tears for their livelihoods. But when you compare the careers to the hype that came with them, to the expectations that came with it, I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me, I guess. I don't really know how to express it better than that. So Lafreniere going to Edmonton, like I said, would just, after 12 years of not meeting expectations, for them to suddenly get maybe a potential dynasty out of it. No.
Yeah, there's also a lack of excitement when top prospects keep going to the same exact places over and over and over again.
Yeah,
you want to see a different team thrown into the mix. Like I look at Minnesota as a team that would be interesting. Like it's not necessarily the most interesting destination right now, but perhaps he helps get them there because they've been stuck in no man's land for the longest time, where it's like they're not good enough to be considered serious contenders, but they're not bad enough to be at like the bottom of a draft and maximizing their opportunity to get a franchise changer. Maybe that changes now this year that they've sort of been thrown into the mix with this weird circumstance. Maybe they get that guy and it sort of brings their franchise to a new level of relevancy. And it's definitely a level of relevancy that they should be at, considering they're one of the best hockey states in the United States of America. So for Minnesota to be as irrelevant as a franchise as they've been over like the past 2 decades, I think that like this could be a solution to that.
That was straight fire. Oh my God.
There's also teams like Nashville or Columbus who are praised for being well-run organizations, but have never, I guess Columbus had Rick Nash many years ago. But look, Edmonton may wind up with the first overall pick, but they're definitely going to wind up with the Stanley Cup final being played in their building this season. It was announced today or late yesterday. I'm not entirely sure when it was finalized, but Toronto and Edmonton will be the hub cities for the NHL's return to play plan, assuming that it goes through. Carrlyn, any thoughts on Toronto and Edmonton hosting the playoffs and the qualifying rounds?
I believe it's still likely rumored. So it's like the highest likely rumored. Yes. So I wouldn't say confirmed, but thoughts in a good way or a bad way? Where do you want me to lean? Good thoughts, bad
whatever
thoughts?
Your thoughts are.
Okay, because I'm just the eternal optimist.
Let's start with bad.
I love that they're both in Canada. That's great.
Okay.
I think that's amazing. I think that they're both great cities. I don't know. The thing that I think about though is the health of the cities, the what COVID looks like in that city. And I just hope that their numbers are low and they're able to make that bubble around those players as protective as possible, because I think, what was it, 26 players have tested positive, some of them being inside of their training bubble already, some of them still being where they were, off-season training and out of state. But that worries me a lot, and I can't help but think about that being a factor. So I love that those two cities presumably have low numbers. Again, like, I don't know the actual number, but that's really truly my main concern. All I can think about as we push toward this is people's health, and I want to say that those are good choices in that regard, and great food too. If you're going to be in Toronto, like, I feel like hopefully there's some good things included in that mix in their bubble.
I mean, who knows how much of that food they'll be able to get to given the bubble restrictions.
I know.
But
What
Pete,
does the menu look like now? Jeez.
Any thoughts on Edmonton and Toronto, Pete?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that a Canadian city will get to host the Stanley Cup final, like, for once.
Yeah.
But no, I think that, like, the United States mismanagement of the coronavirus is why we're having two Canadian cities host the entirety of the playoffs, because Vegas was rumored heavily from the very beginning, and I honestly believe that they would have gotten the opportunity to be a hub city had the recent spike not sort of pushed them out of the running. I think that Vancouver was another really enticing option. Vancouver's a beautiful city, and I think that they would have loved to have it there, and I think a lot of the players would have loved to go to Vancouver and play, but they wouldn't back off of their guidelines and their health and safety guidelines and those sort of protocols to accommodate the NHL, and so they were sort of pushed out. And I think that when you look at Toronto and Edmonton, those are two fine options. And then when you consider the fact that Edmonton, it's rumored that Edmonton is going to get to host the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final, I think that's the safer and probably smarter of the two choices there, because Toronto has had its issues. So I think overall the league did a pretty good job of managing this to the best of their ability, and sort of limiting the risk.
It's going to be a fascinating couple of days, because phase 3 and 4 have Carrlyn correctly corrected me. The agreements have not yet been reached, but there's also a lot of collective bargaining agreement details that have to be worked out. It sounds like compliance buyouts will not be part of the agreement, but it sounds like Olympic participation in 2022 and 2026 will be included. I mean, who would have thought that a pandemic might have solved some of the collective bargaining agreement issues between the league and the Players Association? But Pete, we want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Pete.
We're going to take a word from our sponsor right now, but when we come back, Carrlyn and I will take a look around the world of Kings social media. Thanks again, Pete.
It's one all, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Thanks again to Pete Blackburn from CBS. Carrlyn, it's time for a look around the social media world of the LA Kings.
Yes.
Sentence got away from me halfway through it. What do we got this week?
The social media world of the LA Kings. No,
Yeah.
you got it. You got it. You made it. Start to finish. All right. So for this week's social media roundup, we're going to start off with Bailey and his Zoom call reaction with fans. And it's them reacting to the pick that the Kings will be getting. So second overall pick. And everyone is extremely excited. It's a great little video. Super cute. Bailey posted it on his Instagram. And that's a lot of fun. Think about being in that call and having to be able to see other fans' reactions at the same time. That's kind of cool, because we usually just, watch this in the comfort of our own homes. And look what technology did, Jesse. Brought Kings fans together.
Yeah, I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of other LA Kings employees, and the idea was that we would do something very similar if the Kings wound up getting the first overall pick.
Yeah.
I declined to turn on my camera or my microphone because I am a crazy person and I don't need people seeing me act like a crazy person.
Bobbing. crying? Was
well,
there tears?
there was a lot of loud clapping and profanity coming from my laptop, so
Part of the
I
same reason I didn't
declined
post.
to participate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we didn't post anything for my home either because there is a Ducks fan living here, and
Right.
profanity
Boo.
was prevalent. So
Yeah.
next up, we've got an update with Max,
My
and
mind
Max
is so
was
blown
going
right
through some
now. I mean,
surgery,
look at this
having a
stuff.
tough time, and
Who
we
sent it
remember
to
Trevor
you?
Lewis reaching out with a message to him,
Bailey.
and
Oh my
Max's
gosh,
mom
that's so
actually posted an update
My
because Bailey
mind
also
is so
reached out
blown
and
right
sent him a
now.
baby
I mean,
doll,
look at this
and his
stuff.
reaction was just priceless.
Who sent it to you?
Bailey.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice of him.
Oh my gosh.
And obviously, we wish him all the best in recovery from that. The Luff Pups will not be featured on this week's episode of All the Kingsmen Live, Carlyn, but we do have some dogs, correct?
We do have some dogs. So the Kings tweeted asking for anybody to post their good luck charms. And there were a lot of dogs that popped up in the tweet thread there. And super, super cute dogs wearing hats, just adorable. I mean, if the dogs, I mean, if they're bleh, I can't even talk. Man's best friend, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
maybe also man's best good luck charm because it did the Kings some good here, getting the second overall pick. I think
Well,
the dogs
then
have something to do with it.
there must be a ton of dogs involved with the qualifying round teams who wound up winning that first overall pick because that luck came through for them.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. Next up, we've got Drew Doughty smile thread. And it's just this it's going through the evolution of Drew Doughty's smiles and one by one, kind of making it get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's all these like great memories of how we know him to be. And then at the end, when it's just like out of control, big, huge smile. Yeah, there it is. The one that's just like so Drew Doughty. It's not even funny. Like that's the one that's burned into my brain whenever I think of this guy. What about you, Jesse?
One of the biggest reasons that I loved Luke Robitaille as a kid was because anytime he scored or got an assist or somebody else did something great, you could feel his energy and his enthusiasm for the game. And Drew Doughty is cut from the exact same cloth. That's one of the reasons I loved him right away as well.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons people love Alexander Ovechkin too, that players that bring that exuberance and that love for the game, through their entire essence are just great. They're fun to watch. So good job by the Kings to highlight that quality from Drew Doughty.
I feel like Luke still has that quality, even just around the office.
Yeah.
That's very ingrained in my brain of when I think of Luke. And maybe if Drew finds himself in a management role down the road, he'll be that same person with that same just toothless smile. Maybe he'll have teeth by then. Who knows? Maybe he won't. But next up, we've got Dustin Brown and Martin Ferk with high school versus now photos. So Dustin Brown in high school, look at this photo. I mean, just great, right? You can't tell if it's dark inside the arena or if the flash was super bright. Who knows? And then we have a picture of him now, like we know him now. There he is in all his glory. And then Martin Ferk, Jesse, his photo from high school, it looks like a professional photograph. And I couldn't pinpoint the differences between maybe when Dustin Brown was in high school and when Martin Ferk was in high school. But do they have professional photographers now that are just in the stands that are?
Well, I think Martin, I could be wrong, but Martin Ferk's high school career might have been around when digital cameras existed, and Dustin Brown's perhaps didn't.
Yep, maybe Dustin's was still in that way.
My
does.
My high school days, I don't think there were digital cameras yet, or
Oh,
certainly not available to the public.
we do have some photos of our high
geez.
school days
Oh,
because
there's Martin Ferk today.
there he is, Martin Ferk today. Great big smile. Our
I think that was after the. Now there we go.
producer and director Chris Wallers with the great idea to also post our high school photos. Jesse, what are you contemplating in this photo? And tell us about this hairstyle because it's just so freaking awesome and so 90s. I love it.
Yeah, well, that was in Yosemite. I think that was me eating a cup of noodles for breakfast, like you did. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't contemplating anything. I was just trying to look cool for the picture. I'd say mission accomplished.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah,
You
thanks.
nailed it. Yeah.
What about you, though? What did you look like in high school?
Absolute garbage dumpster fire. This is
Nah.
I found out what dashboard confessional was and cut my hair into like this like emo little hairstyle. The whole back was like spiked up. It's called the duck butt. And I think I was wearing a seatbelt for a belt. You could get those at Hot Topic,
Oh,
and I would
yeah.
interchange that with my studded belt. And here's me being edgy with a basketball on my head. So sophomore year, looking good.
Oh,
wait,
wow.
Did you ever have to like do your hair for homecoming? Because that's what mine looked like.
No, I never did have to do my hair for homecoming.
That's me.
And I never had braces either. But that's a great that's a great photo there.
Are you sure? No.
Yeah.
It's not.
We're gonna call you Jaws from now on.
Oh my god. That's how. Yep. That's the evolution of Carrlyn.
Yeah.
Right there. What is my neck doing? It looks like I'm like.
You're
Oh,
smiling. I'm pretty sure.
my veins are popping out of my neck. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's gonna do it for our high school photos. Thank God. And we were actually gonna end with some great news with regarding Oscar Lindblom. It's Flyers forward who was diagnosed with cancer in December of 2019. A rare cancer that the whole hockey world was rallying behind him. And Jesse, you know very well when you're in the hospital and you get to ring the bell, means your treatments are done. And this is just such a huge moment for him, such a huge moment for the Flyers. And you don't have to be a Flyers fan to cheer this guy on. And this moment is just super special. And I'm so happy that he is okay and seemingly on the road to just total recovery. I mean, ringing that bell, that's the sign. End of treatments. Jesse?
Yeah, this may be one of the few times that I do cheer for the Flyers. So good for him, good for them. And obviously we do wish for a full recovery. And hopefully, I mean, I don't know the details of his prognosis, but hopefully he'll be able to play hockey again in some form someday. But it certainly, in the environment that we're in right now, it highlights just how important it is to be grateful for those blessings that we have, in this being one of those. So I think that is going to wrap it up for this week and all the Kingsmen Live. Carrlyn, I want to thank you for joining me again.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate it. It's always fun getting to hang out with you on a Thursday.
Big thanks to Pete Blackburn for joining us. Huge thanks to MANSCAPED for presenting this. And of course, as always, thanks to everybody from the Kings behind the scenes who makes this episode possible. But most important of all, thank you to the fans for joining us and sitting here with us for half an hour today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.